Brendan. Okay, so now it's recording. But if it's, but just write it down or jot it down and we can always come back to the screen. I just don't want to make sure we don't run out of time, especially with those online, before we can hit through most of the presentation. And so I'm going to be covering most of it, but Kata's going to chime in here or there because there's a lot of points and parts to it that we don't want to miss. Okay. So the legislative changes, there were 4 different bills that hit County Council last year. They were all council driven, so these were not driven by the administration or our office. One of the council members from Kona did an agricultural use and homeowner tax rate. And it was the first time for County of Hawaii, and actually any county within Hawaii, where if you were getting the lower agricultural use value, so that means you were in a program, you submitted an application at some point in the past, you were in a program, and you were also living on your property. It was the first time during this tax year, 2024, you could get the lower homeowner tax rate. And I want to kind of clarify what that means. We get into it a little bit on another slide. But prior to that, if you were getting the lower agricultural use value per acre because you're doing active ag, you had to be in the ag tax rate, even if you were living in your property. So if I was a rancher and I had, 10 acres of pasture that I had at a lower value per acre because I was in the program, but I was also living on the property in my house, I applied for the home exemption. I could get the home exemption and the lower land value, but I paid the higher tax rate. And the homeowner tax class also comes with the 3% cap. So your assessed value can't go up by more than 3% per year. So in the years past when it was approached to council, it was always viewed as double dipping. You're getting the best of both worlds. You can't do that. If you're not doing active ag, then you can't keep your 3% cap there. And for years, it just kind of went back and forth and it never flew through. Well, last year, with all of these agricultural changes, council did approve that. They actually approved this change prior to the other 3 changes, even though that was on the county council's agendas for about 6 months prior. So now you can get both. I can get the discounted land value for doing the pasture. I can get the home exemption for living on the property, and I get the lower tax class plus the 3% cap, which keeps it from going up by more than 3% per year. The only caveat to the program is there's no rental activity. And so I know we covered that 2 weeks ago. There can definitely be not even 1 room rented at short-term vacation rental rates, less than 180 days. And I know that's been another sticking point that we talked about 2 weeks ago. And if you come out of the agricultural program, your land value goes back up to market. So you don't get to benefit at that 3% because you no longer do active ag. So it's a little bit confusing, but the nice thing I think is for old-time families where they've got multiple generations on their properties, and we see it a lot in Holualoa especially, where you might have 3 families on a coffee farm. They are not able to afford to go anywhere else, but they need that 3% cap to protect them from how high the market's been going, even on improvements. So that has lowered taxes for them. But if they were doing rental activity, then they don't qualify for that lower homeowner tax rate like you wouldn't in the regular homeowner tax class. The other change that was made was on long-term commercial agriculture. We've always had a commercial agricultural program. It's 10 years. Before it used to be 20 years. It's just a 10-year program, and it's changed to the wording long-term commercial, but it was called commercial before. There was just some updates to that, so that had some changes. They created a 3-year short-term agricultural use dedication, and they created something called a community food sustainability. And through that, they sunsetted, which means the non-dedicated ag program will be going away. So there was some confusion that the non-dedicated ag program ended this year on September 1st. That's not true. What happens is we cannot take any more applications after September 1st. And so you're still in the non-dedicated ag program if you're in it currently. We sent letters out. But from September 2nd of this year, through September 1st of next year, all of those individuals that have parcels would have to apply to another program. The caveat to that we're going to talk about is there are some proposals coming from council members, and the mayor is in support of some of these as well, to extend that application period. So I'm going to talk about that as we get to those different rules that apply to it. Okay, so I think the big thing here is 4 major changes in bills last year at County Council is what kind of drove all of these changes today. Okay, so when we talked about the homeowner tax class, this is new, and this is, especially if you've been a realtor here for a long time, this is a big change. So it doesn't just apply to agriculture, even though that's what we're talking about here today. There's another program called the Native Forest Dedication that was expanded to include functional forests and successional forests several years ago. But if somebody, and Kolokomauka is a prime example of this, a lot of properties are in the Native Forest Dedication Program. That's a 20-year program. Then they've built their house and they're living in the house. They were stuck with the native forest, lower land value, but then they paid the full market on the improvements. Even if they were living on it, they could get the exemption, but not the lower homeowner tax class. And the 3% cap didn't protect them. And so when Councilmember Inaba introduced this bill, it wasn't just for Koloko, but I was just trying to give an example that anybody in the Native Forest Program or in the Agricultural Program both benefited from this new tax, this new break to allow you to be part of the homeowner tax class. But before I move on from this, I do want to see if anybody has any questions on just this part, because it is a little confusing. Okay.
So to jump in and give some perspective, we have about 2,200 parcels that fit within this category. So we have agricultural use plus it's their primary residence. And so as Lisa mentioned, this came about from that increasing market that we've been seeing over the last 3 years. Building costs have gone up, so a lot of individuals within the homeowners program, but we're doing ag, we're seeing these huge increases on their building value. We weren't seeing the benefit of that 3% cap, and so it was adding a lot of pressure when it came to property taxes, and so this kind of rights the course, so to speak.
Okay. All right, so what changed? So County Council changed, and this bill number is how they introduce the bills at the council level. Once it's approved, it becomes an ordinance. So we just have a little bit of what it's about, the date it was approved, and the finance director rule that was proposed. I just want to reiterate, the code did change from council side. The rules are still considered proposed because the finance director did not sign off on these yet. We only had the public hearing less than 2 weeks ago, and with further changes coming from county council, she is going to hold off on these rules until she sees what the council votes on. So Bill 43, Ordinance 2355, if you go to the county website and you want to see what the actual changes were, they have it in Ramsayer format, which means it's underlined when they add something new and crossed off when they remove something. Then now it's Ordinance 2355, and that will affect Rules 31A and 31B that we're going to talk about. And those are the long-term and short-term ag dedications. Similar with Bill 57, it's Ordinance 2359, that was the non-dedicated ag use. That's the program they're sunsetting. And that's part of Rule 34, it was an existing rule before. And the last is Bill 58, which is Ordinance 2360. That's the new community food sustainability. And the reason we have rules is because the county code changes, and we need something to direct the real property tax office and the finance department how they're going to impose those code changes. So that's what the rules are about. Okay, so finance director, this is proposed again still. I just want to make it really clear, it's still proposed. County council is still going to hear some amendments to make additional changes. We don't think they're going to be so significant. The day after the hearing, there was all kinds of talk about what was going to happen. There was, we're going to repeal the whole thing and defer everything, and we're going to do this and that. It's kind of simmered down now, and we're going to tell you what we've heard this week as of today, and that could change because it's county council and it's an election year. So the finance director rules proposed ag changes. This just tells you, if you're gonna read the 64 pages of the draft rules, what page number this is located on, the rule number, whether it's being repealed, which means it's gonna go away, whether it's new, so brand new rule, or if there's just an update to that rule. This next one, county government, and I explain this every time, I apologize, there's always abbreviations and acronyms. I personally don't care for them, and we use them all the time, so we just kind of gave a little breakdown of what you might see in here. Being realtors, you guys are all really familiar with a lot of these already, but if you can imagine, most of the public isn't aware that the BOC is the Bureau of Conveyances. If they moved here from another state, they are not aware that all of our documents are recorded on a different island at the state level, because in the normal place, I shouldn't say normal places, in other places, it's recorded at the county level. So this is, it's very rare to me to see a state where it's all recorded on a different island. Okay, going over to slide 7. So Rule 31, the old rule, this is one that's going away, was on commercial ag use dedication. And I know there's been a lot of talk that commercial was never in the wording before. It always was called the commercial ag use dedication. The words that got added was long-term. So other things changed besides the name of the program. Terminology was updated and changed by council. They added additional definitions. So this rule is being repealed because it's being replaced by rules 31A and 31B as in boy. If you see in italics under Rule 31 where it says HCC 1960, that's the Hawaii County Code it refers to. Because there's definitely people in the community that want to be able to take what we have written on a slide and compare it to something that's in our county code. So that's there so you can refer back if you want to make sure what we're presenting is facts. Okay, slide 8 is the long-term agricultural use dedication. This is the 10-year program. Again, this program was here before, but there are some requirements that were added. In addition to the requirements, the word or, unless, exception was also included. But when it got a lot of attention, the ors kind of dropped out and it became you have to give $2,000 gross income. And so we're just going to go through this to clear up what is actually being asked for. There is, if you refer to definitions, which is in Hawaii County Code 19.2, and then you have to take that and read it along with the Hawaii County Code chapter it pertains to. It's hard to keep cross-referencing it. So this was a document we prepared not just for the public for a public hearing, but for our staff to be able to refer back to. So this is similar to the way it was before. All applications for this dedication, whether it's short-term or long-term, are due on September 1st. That didn't change. The requirement is one of the following. It's either a $2,000 annual gross income per farm operation, which you can submit from your Schedule F, or your state form G49, which is your consolidation of your GE tax. Just keep in mind that your Schedule F does not need to show a profit. It just needs to have 2,000 annual gross operation income. One of the questions we got asked was, our farm operation is a lot more than just this one little area. If your farm operation includes other areas, it's your whole farm that we're asking for. If that includes, it can include multiple parcels. It can include non-contiguous parcels, which means they don't have to be in the same location. It can be on any parts of this island, to be honest. It doesn't even have to be in the same town. So we just need to know where the parcels are. And that's common on properties where there's rotation going on. Some of the farms on the Hamakua side might be spread out through Hamakua, Hilo, and Ke'au. Or adhere to generally accepted standards or recognized practices within that agricultural industry. And I understand the big concern is, what does that mean? And what we're asking for at real property tax is to provide details in a farm plan. There is a template we created. It's 3 pages long. It is not on the county website yet. It's fill in the bubbles or hit yes, do you have perimeter fencing if you're doing ranch pasture? Yes, do you have a water source? Yes or no? If you don't have a water source, please explain how the animals or livestock is getting water. And it's that type of questions. It is going through multiple reviews right now. So it's government, so it doesn't just, we created something we thought would answer all the questions so someone could fill out a farm template, but it's going through multiple agencies at the county level who deal with agriculture. So we don't have that here for you today, but we'd love to have it on the website. The program starts September 2nd. We really wanted to have it up prior to that.
And we use a lot of language, ranch plan, farm plan, that can sound overwhelming, very significant. The idea behind this plan template is to make it very easy for someone to use when they're submitting their application. On the flip side, we want it to be easy to use for our 15 appraisers that go out and vet these applications. So the idea is simplicity on both sides, and it's really lead us to the water, right? Let us know kind of what type of agriculture you're doing to assist us in this process. Really. Maybe think about it as an agricultural plan.
I think that's a better term. The word farm plan is a little bit much. I think hearing it, and when I thought farm plan, I was thinking a farm business plan, because that's what the definition looks like. But it's really more of an idea of what you're growing. An example would be, we have a lot of blue rock in West Hawaii. You can't plant anything over blue rock. But if you're looking at an aerial image or someone's driving by it, it just looks like land that's sitting there doing nothing. But if you have it written down, 1 acre of my 2 acres is blue rock, nothing can be planted on it. That kind of helps to show the appraiser, assessor, anybody in the future, or our auditor that comes to audit us, that was taken into consideration. We didn't miss it as the county or property tax office, that you've already taken into account, you can't do anything on it. Other examples of when you wouldn't have 2,000 income is when you have a family ranch, when you have food hubs, ag co-ops, orchards with newly planted trees that aren't going to bear fruit. And there's other times where you're not going to have recorded leases. Recorded leases was a huge, huge thing that came out of the testimonies. And we're asking, do you have a signed contract? Do you have an agreement? Do you have anything besides a verbal handshake with an individual who might be doing farming or ranching on your land, so that we can make sure we're giving you the lower ag value? One additional requirement here is, and it's one of the following, not all of the following, which was, I believe, incorrectly stated accidentally on a podcast. It's one of the following, the farm plan. Again, that's that template that we came up with. It's going to hit almost every category for your exceptions. If you have a ranch plan already done, you can submit the ranch plan, and if it's not like a 175-page document of a ranch plan. But some people already have that figured out because they've already done a plan for either the bank loan or to get some type of certification, or USDA organic certification, or NRCS plan, which we've been told is really done by your local soil and water conservation districts, or your USDA food safety certification. I just want to clarify, all of these ORs were added in there because our office was taking these before. We had no authority to accept this instead of your 2,000 income or a GE tax. And so the attorneys did look at that and say, if you're accepting that already, this needs to be included in here because you have no authority to accept these in place of other things. So we're not saying you got to go out and do a farm plan plus get an NRCS plus your USDA certificate. All of those are way more difficult to do than a farm plan, way more. But if you already have it, then don't worry about the farm plan, just present that instead. Does that make sense? Okay. Or $10,000 investment. So we have people who have said, I've already put in a lot of money into the property. I'm not growing anything yet. It took me forever just to clear it, to pull out the trees, to put up the fencing. And so we didn't come up with the $10,000 investment. That was council. And they have it within 2 years prior to the application. So if you don't want to do any of the above, but you've already put in a lot of money into your land, then you could submit your receipts for what you've done. or if there's a recorded agricultural conservation easement with a term of at least 10 years. This was added by a council member on the floor at the council hearings. And so I will admit, this is the area our office knows the least about. But I do understand it's becoming a more popular thing here. It's popular in places in the mainland where they record agricultural conservation easements. So if you have that, then you don't submit all of the ones that I mentioned earlier. There is a maximum 3-year fallow period. If you need more than 3 years, that's fine. Put it in a farm plan or just share how come you need more fallow. The biggest issue we come across is if we're audited, and so let me share how the audit works. We're audited every single year in our office. Auditors from the outside, they're usually from Oahu, come over and they randomly pick all these different categories. So they might pick 10 or 15 from ag, 10 or 15 from homeowners, 10 or 15 from native forests. And they'll just give us the TMK numbers, and we have to provide all of the documentation that shows from their application, when the application came in, how we applied that value or the exemption or the tax rate. And we have to pinpoint it back to the part of the code that allows us to provide that discount and recreate the taxes. And the reason they do that is to make sure we're not handing out a friends and family discount to people we like, and that there's proper documentation there. It also asks for, if we disallowed something, we need to provide the documentation where we've sent a disallowance letter. And if there's an appeal, then we provide the documentation on our appeal process. So there is a whole auditing process. When it comes to this 3-year fallow, what's important for us to see, and what we honestly don't have right now, is when a neighbor or someone's driving by and complains, usually it's because they didn't qualify for something or their taxes is higher than someone else, they'll call and say, you know what, this property hasn't done anything for 5 years. How can you guys keep giving them this lower value? And we go pull up our paperwork, we drive by, it's totally overgrown. We don't know they're in fallow because maybe they were growing ginger and they're trying to replenish the nutrients. So the farm plan would help us to be able to combat that rather than sending a disallowance letter and saying, hey, it appears you're not doing anything with your property, we're going to disallow you. And then you have to respond by a certain period of time or you lose that lower ag value. Allows non-contiguous parcels. I covered this earlier. Your parcels don't need to be next to each other. They don't even need to be in the same city. They just need to be on the same island because County of Hawaii, our jurisdiction is just this island. There are minimum sizes in the long term and short term. We do not expect everybody is going to meet those minimum sizes. So what they have here is, let's say you have a farm operation and you've got 1 acre of land and you're doing livestock, but your rancher is pasturing his sheep on your property and multiple other parcels. That's when we need to know who the rancher is. And hopefully you have some kind of agreement with them. I know that's not been the case, and so we are trying to meet with the Cattlemen's Council. I haven't talked to the Cattlemen's Association yet about what is realistic, but what was in the code was recorded leases. Again, this is where admin side pulled back a little bit and said they would take contracts and agreements. Just something to show that you have a rancher on your property. If you don't meet the minimum size, again, the farm plan is your best option. It has a question on there. Do you meet minimum sizes with all your parcels? If not, please share how you have a viable ag operation. Most times they're going to qualify. There are going to be times they don't qualify. Having 1 sheep on 5 acres is probably not going to qualify. And I know that seems super funny, Mark, but you know there's properties like that on the west side, and we're going to share later what a huge discount they're getting. So if their property is 5 acres and you're valued at $500,000, I mean, the amount of taxes you're going to save versus paying $420 an acre, not taxes, your value drops to $420 an acre. That's minimum tax, $200. And so that's a great benefit, and it's awesome if you're doing livestock and you're actually doing something with it. If you have 1 sheep, should you be getting that huge discount that someone's actively ranching their land? The way the code is written, no, you don't. Okay, so the last things on here is dedications. All of these dedications are recorded at the Bureau of Conveyances. It is a 10-year dedication. We've always recorded 10-year dedications. That's not something new. The benefit starts if you apply between September 2nd, 2024 and September 1st, 2025. You see that benefit, which means your lower taxes for July 1st, 2026. Do you want to add anything to this one? Okay, we got through one program. That was the one that didn't change much. It only gets worse from here, you
There
guys.
is one question on
Yes.
mine before we go ahead. She says she lives in Kuokomaka and they have dedicated native forest land. Is there anything they need to do to receive the homeowner tax rate and 3% cap, or will it apply automatically?
It should have applied automatically. If she has her assessment notice, she should look at it. If she doesn't have it, she can go online to our hawaiipropertytax.com website and see what happened. She should have also just got her bill.
So on the assessment notice
Okay.
or online under tax classification, it will say homeowner, and that's an indication that she's receiving that homeowner's tax class. And then
I was gonna see if there's a part, I don't think I get into our website in this training today. She's also to email me or Kata. Our email address is on the last page of this PDF.
Okay.
And we can go and tell her exactly what happened. Okay. Yeah. As long as she's already applied for the homeowner in the past, she should be getting the lower homeowner tax rate automatically. Unless we show rental activity. Okay, so do you think it's not advancing? Okay, here. Rule 31A, this just covers a little bit more of what we've already discussed about minimum sizes. This is what the minimum sizes are. They're down here on the bottom. So 1/4 acres intensive agriculture, that is your potted plants, your piggeries, your, tell us what it is. It's all of those,
all of those things.
Yeah. It's quite a bit. So 1/4 acre is 10,890 square feet. So it's a
Greenhouse,
smaller lot.
Orchids.
Your orchards are 1 acre minimum. Feed crops or fast rotation forestries, 5 acres. Pasture or slow rotations, 10 acres. Diversified ag is 0.25 acres. Diversified is a new category. That means if you're in a blend of intensive ag and orchards, which was what we were seeing, people didn't want to have to come back and share that they were switching types of crop. I do want to cover the 10 acre minimum is something the finance director is looking at reviewing based on what the 2022 US Census from USDA on agriculture, the average size for pasture there. And she's looking at possibly lowering that based on what the census provides for the Big Island. So they have US Census countrywide and then statewide, and then they have some information for the Big Island. So I know she is looking at lowering it there. I did not hear if she was considering lowering feed crops or fast rotation yet. Okay, continuing on with Rule 31A, just a recap again, if you don't meet those minimum sizes, just put in the farm plan what your agricultural operation is. An example of one that is already approved is someone who has a mixed use of koa trees, chickens, and bamboo they use for takenoko and fishing poles, and takenoko is like the Japanese bamboo shoots that you can eat. It's not totaling the acreage it needs, but they are running an agricultural operation. Now sometimes when you drive by that, I don't know if you've seen where bamboo is running or clumping, it kind of looks a little wild, and having some chickens running around can be wild, and koa trees. And so it's hard to tell, especially in certain parts of the island. You can go 2 weeks and it's looking like a forest already. Well, not quite a forest, but it's looking unkept. So if you provide more information, it kind of helps us to know, okay, this is sort of their plan. Not that you're gonna go and mow the yard every 2 weeks. That's not what we're asking for. Just provide some details that that bamboo isn't running. It's part of your farm operation. Okay, and the agricultural use guidelines. Can you pull up that paper, Kayla? So these are the agricultural use guidelines. It's just a guideline in our office. This was created many years before I came to real property tax. To me, that's when everything is great and you have the perfect conditions and it looks good. Do I think every coffee farm looks like that? I have not seen many coffee farms that look like the way it does on here. Or ginger farms, because I drive Hamakua almost every other day. And so it just kind of gives you an idea of, in a perfect world, this is the guidelines that they're looking at. Okay, the long-term 10-year commercial dedicated ag use, this last slide on it is slide 11. And this just kind of breaks down more into your application side of it on the far left. The finding of facts is what real property tax has to do. And then there's some information about a breach, because up until now, we haven't talked about any of the breaches. So we covered the application pretty extensively, but it's rewritten here. Some people like it in different formats. Finding of facts. So the big question is, why does real property tax need that dedication filed by September 1st? So when the dedication is filed by September 1st, clerical enters it, they provide it to the appraiser. The appraiser has until November 15th to inspect the properties. They're always supposed to have inspected properties. Inspecting properties isn't a new thing. They're always supposed to inspect, and then they verify if there's active ag. If there isn't any active ag, or if they're gonna approve it, disapprove it, or not allow all of the area being claimed, we have to send letters out by December 15th. Those are certified mailings. We mail it to every applicant. By that time, we're also stating, okay, this is how much is approved. Now we need to record a dedication at the Bureau of Conveyances. So if you're in land court, then you need to pay $36 for that recordation. If you're in regular system, it's $41. That's subject to change if the state of Hawaii changes the rates. They changed it a couple years ago. They haven't changed it since. And then your benefit begins that following year. Your assessment notices are set January 1st. We mail them all out in March, so 141,000 parcels. And on your assessment notice, there's a period of time to appeal. We mail them out by March 15th of every year. By April 9th, you file your appeal if you don't agree with us on your value, or if you didn't get your agricultural dedication, or if you feel you should have gotten more area. All that information is also on our website. So in case you misplace your assessment notice, you can go to our website and see it there. The breach. So if you sell that property, it's not an automatic breach. If your buyer is willing to do an affidavit of continuation, then, and that basically means they're going to adhere to the dedication you did. It's not a new 10-year, but they're going to serve the term of the dedication you already applied for. There's no breach there. But they usually handle that during escrow. Where things get a little haywire is if you're going to do something outside of escrow, and somebody wasn't aware of it because maybe they didn't look into it, or they mentioned it verbally, but nobody filed an affidavit of continuation. If the buyer decides later not to do it, the buyer will end up getting the rollback because taxes stay with the land. So even though the seller benefited, I just want to caution you, if you're representing somebody and it's not going through escrow for some reason, just make sure that the buyer is aware. If they're not going to do it, they need to have that canceled prior to the sale. So the seller pays for that breach, not the buyer. You can subdivide. You can subdivide a long-term or short-term commercial dedication. This was not the case always in the past. If you subdivide, you can go below 5 acres. It's happening, it's more common because somebody wants to subdivide and give land to their children, right? But they have to, all the keiki parcels, so let's say I'm 10 acres and I subdivide to 2 3-acre parcels and a 4-acre parcel. All those parcels are subject to that dedication. If one of the buyers or one of the kids decides they don't want to participate, then that could be, that parcel would be in breach. Did you want to add anything to that?
We have about, just to give you some perspective, we have a little over 800 parcels currently in this 10-year dedicated program.
Okay, and then of course breaches if you don't do any ag. Let's say you decide partway into it, I did a 10-year dedication, it's too much work, I don't want to grow anything, I'm not going to let somebody else use it, I'm just going to stop. If we catch it, then there is a rollback on it and there is a 10% penalty. And so doing active ag is is the best thing to do. I know for anybody that's growing mac nut trees, it's been a lot of heartache because nobody was buying mac nuts, and it was a lot of work, so it was just falling. We're not coming in, as long as you're still trying to maintain the land, we're not coming in and saying, oh my gosh, you didn't pick up your mac nuts, so we're gonna roll you back. We haven't done that. Even for people with coffee trees, if you had to cut your coffee trees and you're intending to grow back, or you had avocado and you had the fungus, we're not coming in and trying to penalize all of them by rolling them back. However, there have been people who have cut down trees and have no intent to do anything else going forward. If you have zero intent to do anything, then you're not going to be able to get the active agricultural lower land value anymore. So the best thing is to try and work with somebody to come and work on your farm. I know a lot of people, especially in Hololoa, have said they can't, before you could lease it to somebody or pay somebody a low amount, they would come and work your land. Now it's almost like you have to let them work on it for free so they can harvest and take the money, and you're not making much, but you'll get the lower land tax. So that might be something you want to consider. Depending where you're located on the island, that may work. You may not even be able to find anybody to work on that land because it's very hard to find workers. Okay, seriously, now we're getting to the short-term commercial agriculture use dedication. I need to drink water, so
Okay.
I'm gonna turn this
So
over to you.
This will move a lot quicker now that we've gotten through the 10 years. So this is a new program that was created. Applications will start September 2nd of this year for anybody wishing to enter into this program that aren't currently in an ag program. A lot of the same components of the 10-year program, so that 2,000 annual gross income per farm operation through Schedule F or G49, or the adherence to generally accepted standards or recognized practices within that agricultural industry. So this is where the farm plan comes in play again, the agricultural plan, if you will. And so in addition to one of those two components, one of the other following, a farm plan or ag plan, USDA organic certification, or NRCS plan, or a USDA food safety certification, or that $10,000 investment over the prior 2 years of the application. Now, because this dedication is a 3-year dedication, the fallow period is shorter. So 1 year out of the 3 can be utilized for fallow, whether it be for your intensive ag, your orchards, diversified ag, whatever it might be. If greater fallow periods are needed, those details would need to be flushed out in that agricultural farm plan. It's very difficult for our staff to go to a parcel that's empty and in fallow when someone's entering into a program. And so that's why there's that language of a 1-year fallow period. Not to say that there's some legitimacy to that, but we need to understand that a little bit more. Similar to the 10-year dedication, you can have a non-contiguous parcels meeting that minimum size requirement. If you don't meet the minimum size requirement, reflect that in that agricultural plan. One of the big differences between the 10-year and the 3-year dedication, which was not originally in the legislation that was proposed by the makers of this program, of this dedication, was the fact that this program cannot be renewed for more than 3 consecutive terms. This was added as, I believe, a floor amendment on the 11th hour of this legislation by some council members. It is something that's being looked at. One of the biggest concerns that was received from the Rules and Regulations hearing was that the 3 consecutive terms, or having this program for only 9 years and having to choose, really wasn't reflective of the nature of individuals who are looking to enter into this particular program. So you may see some legislation from council to take that out of the code. Do that. One interesting thing to note is we talked about agricultural values. So you'll see over here on this 11/17, these are agricultural values, not to be confused with the taxes that are going to be assessed per acre. So a lot of times individuals get a little bit confused, and they come in and they're like, you're going to charge me $420 in taxes per acre parcel? No. this is the agricultural value that's going to be assessed on a per acre basis. So for example, if you have 3 acres of Holualoa, 500,000 market value maybe, that same 3 acres, instead of being taxed on that 500,000, that same 3 acres would be taxed based on a value of 9,000. So equivalent to a minimum tax of $200 is the actual bill that someone who's getting that ag assessment would receive. This shows you all the different agricultural use categories. So you have intensive agriculture with a value of 4,000 per acre. You have diversified ag, 4,000 per acre. You have your aquaculture, beekeeping at 4,000 per acre, orchards, and so on. Essentially, this short-term commercial ag use dedication, the agricultural values per acre are no different than the current non-dedicated ag use program. So inherently, someone who's participating in a non-dedicated agriculture use program, this would be the most logical shift, is to go into this 3-year program for many of those individuals. There is no, even though we call this a dedication, there is no recordation. For that same reason, there is no rollback provision if this property sells. So for example, someone entering into this 3-year dedication, in the 2nd year they decide to sell the property, there's no rollback. We're not gonna go in time and say you coulda, woulda, shoulda paid this amount of money in taxes, and now we're gonna assess that plus a 10% penalty. This short-term ag use dedication will end, and then the new owners can either reapply for this dedication, or the property will be assessed at its market value. Benefits for this program: if you're entering into this program, again, the applications come out September 2nd of this year. You have until September 1st of 2025 to apply for this program if you want to start receiving the benefits come July 1st of 2026. That follows our normal timeline for dedications. Rule 31B,
Can I just ask a question? That 3-year, we can only renew it for 3 consecutive terms. I mean, if you're truly a farmer, you're just getting rolling at 9 years. You know, especially if you're growing plants or you're building buildings for farm animals, and it takes time to do all that.
yeah.
So I don't understand.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't understand it either. That's why, and that's the conundrum that the division's under, or the department is because we have to take whatever the legislation is and then implement that legislation, whether we agree with it or not. And so, the feedback was loud and clear for a lot of individuals because it does take time, and council is relooking that 3-year, maximum renewal, return, I should say, yeah.
So there's a couple other questions here too. So the first one is, what is the minimum size requirement on Rule 31B?
Yeah, so it's the same as the 10-year dedication minimum size. You have your intensive ag at 1/4 acre, orchards at 1, feed crops, fast vegetation forestry at 5, pasture at 10, and then diversified at that 1/4 acre.
And then, so can rollback taxes only be an issue with 10-year long-term recorded dedications, not with short-term dedications?
For 10 years, it can upon a sale of a property. However, with that said, it can be impacted. There are rollback provisions in the other programs. For example, this 3-year. If someone had signed up for a 3-year agricultural use dedication and ceases to do that agricultural use that was committed to, there is a rollback provision to go back in time and say, okay, this individual committed to agricultural use for the duration of that 3-year period. However, it didn't occur. So there is that carve out in the code.
And then, can you switch to a 10-year dedication after completing a 3-year dedication?
Yes. And you can even, on one property, So let's say you had a 40-acre property. You wanted to apportion some of it to participate in that 10-year dedication, but another portion you want to do 3 years. And even so, another you wanted to do the community and food sustainability. You can portion out acreage within one parcel into one of the 3 programs. It's the same as it is today. We do have properties that are participating in both the 10-year dedication as well as the non-dedicated ag use program. Okay. So this recaps what the previous slide, very similar. Again, that 2,000 annual gross income or adhering to generally accepted standards. Minimum size requirements, there is a carve out in a agricultural plan to just explain the nature of the agricultural operation if an individual is not meeting those requirements. Minimum size, it's covered that, and then agricultural use guidelines. Again, the agricultural use guidelines are an ideal situation. There's a recognition by our office that at any given time, especially when it comes to pasture, at any given time, that pasture quality or the number of animals on a property can ebb and flow. You have drought conditions oftentimes, even seasonal issues that impact a parcel's ability to meet the gold standard, for lack of a better term. As far as the short term, we talked about the application. It's similar to the 10 years, it's September 1st of each year. There is a finding of facts period, similar to that 10-year dedication. Ultimately, the division will determine whether they're going to approve or disapprove in whole or in part no later than December 15th. And the benefit will begin the following fiscal year. So again, an application received by September 1st of 2025 will start to receive that benefit on July 1st of 2026. There is no breach as far as subdivisions. However, again, I talked about this earlier, failure to maintain that active and continuous use is a breach condition. Non-dedicated ag use program. So as Lisa mentioned, there's no new applications for this program that will be received after September 1st of 2024. This is where the timing, I think, gets a little bit confusing for a lot of individuals. We have over 7,700 parcels on island participating in a non-dedicated agricultural use program. And for that very reason, when we're transitioning away from this program, as Council sunsetted, individuals have a choice, right? They have 3 different flavors, the 10-year dedication, the 3-year, or we'll talk about the community food sustainability program. It's gonna take time. We have 15 appraisers. It's gonna take time for our office to vet all of those applications. And for that reason, there is a very intentional building of time to allow the division to vet through those applications with regard to agricultural use benefits. So if a property is participating in a non-dedicated program, individuals will have until September 1 of next year to apply for one of those 3 programs. If individuals apply for one of those 3 programs, they will continue to see that lower non-dedicated ag use benefit through, it's not here, but through June 30th of 2028. Okay, so we're not gonna say, okay, you're done with the non-ag program, non-dedicated ag use program, we're gonna assess you according to a different ag rate. Yes.
You can apply for this program still prior to September 1st
Yes.
for 2025.
Yeah, right. Then you'll need to reapply in that last year, within the year, to another program, but you could kind of hopscotch it a little bit.
To cover the gap between
Yeah. Yes.
the short term coming in 2026.
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
Couple more questions.
Uh-huh.
So on a 3-year renewal, do you have to again show proof of meeting the criteria in the 2 required categories?
Yes, it would be similar to accepting a new application. So every 3 years, we're gonna go and vet that application.
And then if you have leasehold property like Bishop Estates, who applies for the dedication, them or the property owner?
Yeah, so this is where that executed agreement comes into play. It could be the form of a license agreement, it could be the form of, executed contract or whatever it might be. But Bishop Estates in that case could apply for that agricultural use benefit, fix that agreement along with the application. As long as the lease agreement, if the lease agreement is recorded and is, or if it's unrecorded through the duration of the 3-year program, then it would be eligible. I don't know if you wanna add anything, Lisa?
No, I was gonna say, Kamehameha, I chuckled only a little bit, because I know Kamehameha Schools is not doing a lot of their long-term 30-year leases that we used to be really used to seeing, or even longer. And so we're seeing licenses that are 1 year or less, or even 3-year unrecorded. So hopefully they've got something in writing with Kamehameha Schools, but we're not seeing as much recorded leases anymore. So the only caveat I would say is for the long-term dedication, even though it says it's 10-year, you can come in with the 5 years remaining on that lease. Because we know a lot of leases that are starting to come short, and that was written into the rules.
What about Hawaiian homes?
So Hawaiian Homes, pastoral or homestead properties do not pay taxes on land except min tax. So they are by Department of Hawaiian Homelands. There's a Hawaiian Homelands Act. They do not pay. Now, if it is industrial or commercial Hawaiian home leases, which are not to Native Hawaiians, then those do pay taxes on it. They could apply. But typically, those are not their ag lands. But usually, if they're handing out a pastoral lease, those are not recorded, but they're also exempt from paying anything but the min tax, which is what you're going to get with any ag program anyway.
As far as the non-dedicated, walking through that timing, again, application by September 1st, 2025, to retain that preferential tax agricultural value through June 30th of 2028. Now, if a property does not apply by that September 1st, 2025 date, that particular property will lose that agricultural use benefit effective July 1st of 2027. So it's highly encouraged for individuals to apply by that September 1st deadline next year. Okay. A lot of the misinformation that was going out was that individuals had to apply by September 1st of this year. You have a year to apply to figure out what program you want to get into. This is an area that Council is reevaluating. One of the proposals that you might see in the next few weeks, August 20th specifically, is to extend the period that an individual has to file for one of the 3 programs. So extending it out, instead of saying you have to apply by September 1st, otherwise we'll pull it, maybe apply by September 1st of 2026. So you'll have 2 years to apply, and then it would push this out. We will continue the non-dedicated ag use benefits until June 30th of 2029. So rather than just pushing out the implementation a year, just pushing out that period to reapply. Until that becomes law, we still have to move forward with what we got. So Rule 34, we just changed some housekeeping updates, but mostly just to acknowledge in the rules that again have not been approved. These are the proposed rules to add language that reflects the code where the program actually sunsets June 30th, 2028. Community Food Sustainability Use Assessment. So this one, as far as the due dates, mirror our non-dedicated program in a lot of ways. So the application for this program is also going to come out September 2nd of this year. Individuals will have until December 31st to apply for a Community Food Sustainability Use Assessment. And so this particular program does not have any minimum size requirements. It does have the requirement of one of the following: a farm plan or USDA certification, or NRCS or USDA, or that $10,000 investment. One big caveat to this particular program is it's limited to intensive agricultural use, so your truck crops, orchard, and diversified agricultural use only. So it does not include any forestry operations or any pasture operations. And the reason for this is actually, if you take a look at the agricultural use values and you do the math, An individual will actually see a bigger benefit when pasturing animals at 420 per acre versus right here, 30% of market value. So you figure you can get 420 per acre on value as opposed to, let's say that 100,000 per acre of market value instead of paying 30,000 or taxes based on 30,000. So it's a big difference. It makes more sense for an individual to go to like the 3-year to 10-year pasturing. Again, 30% of fair market value. So whether you're in Pulualoa, whether you're in South Kona, whether you're in Puna, whatever the market value is, if a portion of that property is dedicated to this community food sustainability, I shouldn't say dedicated, let me correct myself. If it enters into this use assessment, that portion that's actively used would be taxed based on 30% of the market value. Areas with no active agricultural use. So in the past, our agricultural programs, if it was on a primary residence, the land underneath the house up to a quarter acre would be assessed at a nominal $500. So no matter what the value of that quarter acre would have been, proportionally to the value of the property, it would be taxed based off of $500. With this community food sustainability program, the portion underneath any home sites or areas are assessed at that market value. Okay. And then let's see, kind of talked about any properties not in an ag use program, applications submitted to this program anywhere between September 2nd of this year to December 31st of this year. We'll start to see their benefits come July 1st of next year. Questions?
What would a property look like that would want to be in this category?
Usually it's someone who doesn't want to commit even to that 3-year, is really looking for a program that allows them to kind of get their feet wet, see some of a benefit in terms of reduction in land value, but not be committed for like a period of 3 years or a period of 10 years. So it's really like the most simplest or basic of entry points into ag use. Yes.
I just want to clarify on the rollback from the point of view of a buyer. Is it true that they're only going to incur potential rollback tax liability if it is a 10-year dedication, therefore recorded, therefore visible on the title report, and if they are incurring any tax liability and they're going to close in 3 weeks, can they get a prompt and definitive statement of what that potential tax liability would be in a timely manner?
Yeah, absolutely, we encourage it. So we have a rollback tax form that we share with a lot of escrow realtors. You either fax that or email that to us, it's on our website. We will get back to you to give you a perspective on what that rollback liability will look like. And it'll indicate what program property is participating in and whatnot. We usually get it back to an individual requesting information within a few days. But if it's something of urgency, give us a call, let us know, we can get that too. Yes.
Well, a buyer who wanted to continue with ag, wouldn't they then not have that rollback if they applied and said, you know, I'm going to continue doing whatever the buyer was doing, whether it was coffee or poultry or whatever?
Yeah, that's where that affidavit of continuation comes into play.
Okay.
So that affidavit of continuation is basically saying I'm continuing the original terms of that 10-year dedication through the expiration of that dedication. And so that prevents that rollback provision.
Another question here. Can you clarify the situation for short-term rentals? For example, when a farmer rents a room in his or her home or ohana for periodic farm workers, then they cannot take advantage of these programs.
Okay, so that actually only impacts, so these programs are related to the land assessment. And I think that question is directed to properties where there's agricultural use and there's a home site, so someone's primary residence. If the primary residence, a portion of that is being used for a short-term vacation rental, so the way the real property tax division sees it is anything less than 180 days, so 6 months. That particular property would not be eligible for that preferential lower homeowner's tax rate. But it does not prevent a property from participating in seeing an agricultural use benefit that impacts the land.
What if the rental's in a additional farm dwelling or like not the principal residence? Does it affect the?
Then it wouldn't
ability
affect
to-
it at all because, the property, for lack of better words, would be paying full tax on, or the agricultural rate, the $9.35 for all the buildings and improvements on the property. So in that situation, the best way to limit tax liability is to chisel away at the land value as much as you can to go into these ag programs to limit that.
Kayla, I would just caveat though, you might wanna talk to planning department, because we don't know what planning's restrictions are on the farm dwellings. If they've required that only to be for farm workers or family, because planning has given advice on real property that has not worked out well so far. So I just wanna say, maybe talk to planning department, call from a different phone number, something, you know, from your colleague's desk phone, to find out more about that.
Yes.
Two questions. One, I'm a little confused and sorry I didn't attend the meeting prior. So the rental, not short-term vacation rental, but just rentals in general, how does that impact? Like if you rent out a bedroom to your,
More than
teenager
6
son's
months.
girlfriend,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, so the way that it's interpreted now, if it's under the same roof and it's a rental of more than 6 months, then that property can still maintain that homeowner's tax rate and the 3% cap. Now, if it is 2 dwellings, this dwelling over here is my primary residence, but this one I'm renting out long-term. Under that scenario, the property would not be eligible for that preferential tax rate and the 3% cap. With that said, there's actually legislation that made it out of committee. I think it's Bill 174. Yeah, it's now in full council, to provide clarification and make it really clear as to what that means. And Bill 174 is actually looking at the whole property. So regardless of where it is, whether it's under the same roof, a separate dwelling, if it's rented long-term for a period of more than 6 months, that property would be eligible for that owner's tax rate and tax class if it's the owner's primary residence.
And then the second question, has anyone looked into, for the 10-year program, if this is a recorded document, how it's gonna impact lending? Because if it's a residential loan, by definition, you can't be engaged in intensive farming activity.
Yeah, I honestly do not know the extent of which lenders will go through and take a look at that.
It shows in title, they see it.
Yeah. I mean, from our perspective, if an individual is looking to see the benefit, we don't get into the meat and potatoes of the lending aspects of it. It's really a commitment for 10 years to agricultural use, and whatever collateral issues that may come up, the real property tax division by and large is involved in.
But that, because one of the nuclear fallouts, not requiring this, because it hasn't been required in the past.
It always has for the
Well, I
10
mean, for the short term, the non-dedicated.
The non-dedicated, yeah.
So I would suggest someone look into it.
For the community food sustainability use assessment, it works very much like that non-dedicated ag use in that it rolls over year to year. An individual doesn't have to reapply by December 31st of every year to continue this benefit. However, there is a carve out for a renewal every 5 years. And this is where the documentation is a little bit more clear. There needs to be documentation supporting $1,000 in annual sales or donations to a nonprofit 501c3 if an individual is participating in this.
What do you submit to show your income for these programs? Tax returns or profit and loss statements?
Yeah, you could, probably the easiest way would be through a Schedule F, or if you have documentation from the 501c3 that you've donated, donation received.
Only at renewal,
Yes, only every month.
after 5 years, yes.
So Rule 34 is taking that legislation and adding some languages in terms of eligible uses for this community food sustainability. Intensive ag in this sense, again, means ginger, taro herbs, honey, honeybees. We have orchards, we have diversified agricultural use. We also have agricultural products, I think, in the sense of, even though that this program doesn't allow for pasturing per se, you could utilize goat milk to produce agricultural products, considered a food crop per se. Agricultural guidelines, again, we point to these guidelines. This is what we're looking at in terms of the most ideal situation. If a property is not meeting that ideal situation, having that conversation is really important for the department to have, or division to have. And then this covers, again, community food sustainability. The agricultural value per acre is 30% of market. Areas without any active agricultural use. So let's say you had a 5-acre parcel, half of it was used, the other half not. The half that's not would be assessed at whatever the proportional market value of that acreage is. Again, the area underneath the home site or farm site is assessed at 100% of market value. No minimum sizes. This one, because there is that 5-year renewal period, fallow of no more than 1 out of every 5 years. However, if there's a necessity for greater fallow periods, that would be something that would be included in the agricultural farm plan. Okay. This one is specific county zoning. So this particular program, parcels entering this program would need to be in agricultural, residential, and agriculture, family agriculture, intensive, or agricultural project districts. Similar to the other slides that you see the application right here, finding of facts. So the finding of facts is a little bit different because we're getting the applications by December 31st of every year. Finding of facts would happen or occur prior to January 31st of every year. This mirrors our current non-dedicated program. The division will let individuals know whether they're disapproved in whole or in part, and the benefits will begin the following tax year, so July 1st, the following year. Breach conditions for this particular program: failure to maintain that active agricultural use. If the property sells, very much like the non-dedicated program, there is no rollback based on that sale. Very much like this 3-year dedication that's new. No rollback if it sells. The new owner will need to apply for that agricultural use, meet the qualifications in order to continue that benefit. One caveat to this community food sustainability: there is a provision when a parcel is subdivided to less than 5 acres in size, it is considered a breach condition. This is very similar to the current non-dedicated program. So if you're in a non-dedicated program and the property is subdivided into parcels less than 5 acres, it will trigger a breach for those portions that are less than 5 acres. Okay. Presumably, back when the makers of our agricultural program put this provision in place, it was to prevent speculative type of use. Put that property into ag use, get the lower preferential tax rate, and then develop it. So that's why there's that language there. Here's some examples. Again, these are the gold standards, right? You have piggeries, you have aquaculture, ginger, which is pretty common. You have apiaries, which is becomes more and more commonplace as far as intensive ag. Here's orchards, cacaos becoming much more prevalent on the Big Island. We have coffee, macknut, papaya. Examples of fast rotation forestry, typically see the eucalyptus. Interestingly enough, we see the pasturing of the cows underneath the eucalyptus. It's becoming more of a use of those lands of homophiloside. Corn, we do see that on occasion. And then baling in Hawaii, very different from baling operations that you would see continental US, where you have these huge rolls of hay and whatnot. A lot of those baling agreements are, cut it down every 3 months and then I'll haul it and feed it down. And then slow rotation forestry, a lot of times you'll see koa within this slow rotation forestry category, and then more recently you're starting to see sandalwood. What you have in front of you, and probably the easiest way to digest and unwrap these programs and the changes, is this 11x17. So this is on our website. I believe you guys also have PDFs of it as well. But on one side, you'll see the benefits of each of the programs, and we've also included the non-dedicated ag use. So these are those agricultural values per acre that an individual can kind of compare and contrast some of the benefits of the three new programs. And then on the back side, there's the requirements. It's a lot to read. We attempted to unpackage a lot of this through this presentation. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of questions nonetheless. But it's a good reference sheet to kind of help navigate through this complex process. Again, I talked about this before, agricultural use assessment, value per acre, should have that handout as well. And then our guidelines. Here's kind of a snapshot. We always kind of like to take a overview kind of look of properties on the Big Island. Here is properties, the committed acreage to the various programs that we have in terms of agricultural use. By far, there's a lot of opportunity to expand that out based on the current county zoning ag zone. So. Here's our snippets of our homepage. As Lisa mentioned before, the public hearing occurred on July 18th. This presentation is a modified version of what we presented at that hearing. You can go to the real property tax homepage. You can click here where it says public hearing, or you can go into media releases, click under public hearing. It'll take you to the finance director's page. So you'll hear Lisa's voice, you'll hear my intro. There's some reference materials that you folks have related to those rules that are being proposed. With that, we'll take questions. Lisa's telephone information's here, as well as mine, our emails. Please feel free, absolutely, to email us, call us.
Is the recorded notice of dedication, is that something provided by you? Because I've had a problem in the past where there was a notice of dedication from like 25 years ago, and oh, well, we don't know, it's still there, you know, and that somehow makes it disappear at the end of the period or something, because I haven't had that problem with the title company before.
Yeah, so what happens typically is, generally speaking, the onus is on the owners to record that dedication. However, as a courtesy and ensure that all the properties that are participating in that 10-year dedication, the division takes on that responsibility and record that 10-year dedication. We do not go back and do the cancellation of dedications as these dedications expire. However, what typically will happen is at escrow, title will request those cancellation documents from our office. We'll prepare those cancellation documents, provide it to escrow, and at the closing, you'll see those cancellations come off and clean up that title at that point. Yeah, it's the typical process for us.
Which is crazy, because on the dedication, it says
It
when
says
it
it
ends.
expires, yeah.
Yes.
But escrow
Oh, it's
will
still
pick
there,
it
it's
up
still there.
anyways,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Any more questions from online? The only thing I wanted to add that we didn't cover is one of the additional proposed changes we heard yesterday that they were gonna make besides ending the 3 max term renewal for the short term was adding in clarification that Hawaiian plants were gonna be allowed in there, including tea leaves and plumeria. And so while we allow it now, they want it clarified into the code. And so that is gonna be written in just, I think because there were concerns from at least 3 testifiers of what Hawaiian practices. And that means, and it would be a form of diversified agriculture where you have maybe some flowering plant trees, tea leaves, sweet potato, and other items on the property. So I just wanted to add, on top of all the other changes, and it's coming from different council members. So it's not all coming together on one. 20 will be pretty telling how things are gonna progress. I started by saying there's supposed to be a release from the mayor's office either later today or tomorrow. We're hoping it was gonna happen prior to this meeting. The mayor stands as far as the agricultural program and what he's asking and encouraging council to do. And so that's gonna come out, and from what we understand that he's told us is he's encouraging extending the program the additional year that Kata mentioned, so that it gives people more time to apply. And that pushes everything back an additional year for the non-dedicated. It still means we're not taking applications after September 1st of this year for non-dedicated, but it would allow until 2026 for those applications. All the mayor can do is ask council and provide his input. Council has the authority to make the changes, the mayor doesn't. So I just wanted to share that. Because a lot of people had said, why doesn't the mayor just repeal everything? Have that authority, it has to come from county council. But is there any additional questions? Anything online? No? Okay, well, we're gonna stay here after in case anybody does want to talk to us about specific properties. I know I wanted to talk to Sandy and Rochelle. If you have any issues with staff in our office, please let us know. We're not gonna know otherwise, and this has been a very confusing program. All of the updates are online now. They weren't on the hearing night of July 18th. And we will keep putting up updates as we get to August 20 to let the public know. But I think the main takeaway is the program is not ending on September 1st. You do have time to apply. It doesn't need to be a mad rush. We will make the recommendation to council to look into the bank loans about the 10-year dedication period. I know they were looking into the insurance issues because someone said you can't get insurance. But that, and I know she looked into that and that she came back, it wasn't true, you can get insurance, but I don't know about mortgages. Okay, thanks for having us. I'm sorry this took so long, and we'll see you again.